because the orals, have a little bit of liver toxicity. Depending on which ones you're using, they can have a lot of liver toxicity. Like Dianabol is more toxic than Anavar and Winstrol, but Anadrol is way more toxic than Dianabol, whereas T-bol or Turinabol is probably right under D-bol. So they all have different degrees, but I would say that anything more than Anavar and Winstrol tabs are usually what I would call toxic and something that you wouldn't want to use for more than 4 to 6 weeks in a row. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
RX Television, RXMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. Whatever is on your mind, bodybuilding or non-bodybuilding, it is all on the table. I'm your host, Sadiq Faruqi. So glad you can join us on this, the second day of August in the year 2023. We're going to go right into the questions. A lot of good questions. The first two questions on this show from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. First question, I'm in a season of life as a single man trying to pay off debt and student loans. As such, I work 14, 15 hours Monday through Friday. If I train only on weekends, but with maximum intensity, cardio, etc., can this set my metabolism for the whole week? My job also includes physical activity.
Good question. Some people have very, very busy schedules. And, unless you've worked 15, 16 hours a day, and I'm not talking about working from your home like I do 15, 16 hours a day, because I work all day, but I can kind of take breaks when I want. If I want to go to the gym, I go to the gym. I just have, I might work till later at night. But when you're in a work environment where you can't get up and leave, you have to really prepare. Otherwise, you're really not going to be in good shape, and you're really not going to have the look that you're looking for. I have a woman I work with, and she's, a pharmacist tech, and she's there all the time. It seems like she works almost 7 days a week sometimes. And she packs all her meals with her, and she's super organized about it. And so she never misses a meal. Same thing. You got to prepare your meals. And, this person can only work out on the weekends. That's Saturday and Sunday. I believe that, you could probably maintain a physique doing that. He's worried about his metabolism. I'm not so worried about metabolism, because if you're breaking down a lot of muscle on Saturday and Sunday, your body's going to spend the better part of the week repairing that. So your metabolism is going to be good. And if you're eating the right foods throughout the day, even though you're not training every day, because remember, you only really grow and improve when you're recovering. So assuming that you're damaging muscle on the weekends, you're repairing during the week, you should be fine. Maybe you will grow. I always felt like 3 days a week was like really the minimum, but you might be able to do it if you did half your body on Saturday, half your body on Sunday, and then 5 days, during the weekend. And you're obviously physically active, so it's not like you're sitting on your butt the whole time. So you're going to burn calories doing that. I think that the key is making sure you're eating properly. That's going to be your hardest task, especially if you're working. You got to bring your meals with you. You got to bring your shakes with you. You can't miss eating. And you can't say, hey, you know what? I'm not training on these days, so I'm going to eat less, because that's not going to cut it. You're going to lose muscle if you do that. You have to eat as if the same way you eat on the days you train, you eat on the days you don't train, because you're actually growing more on those days that you're not working out.
Second question, again, from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Would you still recommend your style of training, modified Dorian Yates, high intensity, low volume, for experienced lifters entering into their 50s, currently have no injuries or limited mobility issues?
Well, I think the best way to answer the question would be to tell you what I do. right? Because if I was a low volume, high intensity, heavy weight trainer in my day, and I haven't changed anything. My metabolism is still the same. I'm still the same person. So when I go to the gym, I still do low volume. I just don't lift as heavy weights. And I don't need to because I'm not as big. So I don't need, I couldn't, first of all, I couldn't lift those heavier weights. And I don't need to because I can stimulate my body using lighter weights. So when I train, even though I call it lighter weights, it's really not lightweight. I'm still lifting, challenging my body. And some people would say, you're lifting pretty heavy weights. I don't know, but for me, it's not heavy, but I feel like they're heavy. So when I do a set of bench press, I might only do, 185 on the bench or the incline bench, which for me feels like 405. It used to feel to me when I was 300 pounds. So it's perception, but I'm still doing the same, less volume, high intensity. I push hard on the sets I'm doing it, even if my weights are lighter than they used to be. And I'm doing lower volume because if I do high volume, I don't respond well and I don't recover and I overtrain real easy. So you have to see what works for your body. Some people can do higher volume and recover. Some people, they don't recover well. And I think as we get older, we need less volume and we need less days of training. I remember reading, I think it was, I'm trying to think who wrote the article. And it might have even been related to running, where a guy said he only runs 3 days a week. Now, if you're long distance runners run every single day, 7 days a week, you never take a day off. And this guy was like, as I got older, I found that I didn't need to run as much to keep my same level of endurance. I only run 3 days a week because I need more time to recover. And I didn't really understand. To me, it sounded like a cop-out for not training every day of the week. But I understand now what his mentality was, because as you get older, like I could grow better training less days a week than doing more days a week. If I did 6 days a week, I probably would lose muscle or wouldn't make progress. Whereas if I train 4 days a week, 5 max, usually I do 4 days. I find that that's ideal for me. But you have to kind of see how your body responds. If you're not growing and you're not responding and you're actually going backwards, then maybe you're overtraining or under eating, But I think as you get older, your body can't take as much abuse, and it takes longer for your body to recover from the same workouts maybe that you did when you were younger, especially if you're not taking the drugs that you were taking when you were younger. You might only be on HRT right now, and it's going to take a little bit more time for you to recover. Give yourself that time. Who cares? As long as you're eating right, you're going to look good. And that's what it's all about.
Let's go to our Instagram questions. If you're not following us there on Instagram, official_RX Muscle. If you're new to this channel, we welcome you. We ask that you subscribe below, hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss any of our shows, segments, videos, whatever we have coming up over the course of the next few days, weeks, months. Obviously now into the thick of the IFBB Pro schedule. Tampa Pro this week, Hunter Labrada competing, so a lot of excitement there as well. And of course, big show, Texas Pro on the 19th. Andrew Jack, Hunter Labrada, Carlos Thomas Jr. making his pro debut. So again, we're going to have full analysis of all these upcoming shows. Subscribe below, hit the notification bell. If you like what you're watching, hit the like button, comment below. And as always, we appreciate all of your support. Kind of a deep question here, again, speaking about the state of bodybuilding as it stands. The question is from A2 Rhino. Do you see that there is more of a distance now than ever between the top 12 open pro bodybuilders than the rest of the pros, with the newcomers, obviously like Andrew and the aforementioned Carlos? It only seems to be getting wider and wider, making the others look like, in his words, semi-pros. Do you think that this is why so many pros aren't competing in the qualifier shows like in the past?
That's the way it's always been. And if you think about it, even go back to the heyday, go back to the 90s. You had your top 10 or 8 guys that were the best, Levrone and Wheeler and Ronnie. And when Yates was competing, you had, Nasser, Cormier, Lee, Priest. And then there was everyone else, there was like some guys that kind of bridged that gap, but, and I probably left out some names, so don't Sean Ray, but those guys were so far ahead of everyone else. And then there was everyone else. So, but that's always the history of bodybuilding, because let's face it, there's only so many genetic freaks on the planet. And everyone else got there from hard work, with good genetics, but with hard work. I saw a picture of Andrew Jack today. I can't put it up because I swore Chris to secrecy, but the guy is like from another planet. I mean, this guy could win the Olympia, come the end of the year. I mean, wait till you see him in Texas. He's going to just boggle people's minds how good he is. And it has nothing to do with, the guy who just won the pro show, down the block, so to speak. He's good too, but he's just not Andrew Jack. And just like, there were great pros back in the, Darren Charles was a great pro, but he wasn't Ronnie Coleman, and so that's just the way it will always be. And then there's another, gap from the guys who are top amateurs to the pros. There's another big jump there. And that's, some people can bridge that gap and move through those ranks. Look at Nick Walker, what he did. Look at Shire, who I'm going to be interviewing in a little bit. He jumped right into his pro debut and won. So it can be done. And it's the genetically gifted people who have the work ethic who can do that and can make those jumps. And that's what makes the sport, I find, interesting, because you don't want to have 100 guys that look like, Ronnie Coleman. It would be boring. It's great that you have all these different physiques grouped together. The great thing about this year's Olympia is that I really think it's wide open. I would be shocked if Hadi repeated and won again. I really would, only because there's so much good talent in this competition, and a lot of new guys like your Andrew Jack, like your Samson Dowda, new guys guys that were there that are improving. People can't count out guys like Brandon Curry. So it's going to be the most exciting Olympia maybe of all time, because of the fact that there are people making those jumps from the lower tiers up to the higher tiers, and we didn't see them there before. So that's the sport of bodybuilding. I wanted to also mention, I forgot earlier, the first two questions were from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. That's my app that you can subscribe to for $29 a month. You get me as your coach in your back pocket, all my videos, articles that I've ever written in one place, all my protocols, diet, off-season, drug cycles, anything you can think of. Plus, we put up a workout every single week. I answer everyone's questions in an open forum. So anytime you have a question, you can ask me, and everyone gets to see the question and the answer, which is great because you learn that way. It's like a learning app that's constantly evolving. And I do a question and answer video exclusively for the app members. So something that no one else gets to see except the app members. And if you're looking to be a great coach, or just to learn how the body works for your own bodybuilding needs, you got me in your pocket. Essentially, I just spilled my stimuli. I'm too stimmed out. You got me in your back pocket, essentially, every single month with constantly new content. That's how you learn. I wish there was an app like this when I was, starting out, because I always wanted to learn new stuff. And I wanted to have someone to be able to ask questions who can answer any question I have. That's the advantage of having this app. And it's cheap enough that you can almost chalk it up as, hey, I'm not going to go out to eat once a month. Save that money, and I'm going to put it towards the Dave Palumbo Experience app, and I'm going to become a better bodybuilder and a better coach that way.
Let's go to Ray Ryan. What's more effective, Trenbolone suspension or Trenbolone acetate?
I've never used Trenbolone suspension, which I would imagine would just be Trenbolone powder, I guess, in water. I mean, maybe Tren acetate, which is what a lot of us have used in the past, is a different beast, because Trenbolone acetate, it's short acting, but it's not water-based. So it's not out in a couple of hours. Anything that's water-based only lasts a few hours in the system. So I can't imagine that Trenbolone water-based would be a good drug to necessarily take, because you'd only be exposed to it for a couple hours a day, or you'd have to be injecting it all day. So I would have to say that the longer acting, if I had to pick between the two, would be the better option, the Trenbolone and enanthate. Personally, I liked Trenbolone acetate the best. Unfortunately, it seems to cause the most side effects in terms of jacking your blood pressure up a little bit, making people have trouble sleeping at night. Some people get indigestion from it, even chronic hiccups. So, if you fall into that category, you might opt for the Trenbolone and enanthate, which is the longer acting one.
Let's go to Mike Locandro. Creatine. Does creatine cause muscle tears, and why?
To be honest with you, I never heard that. I don't know why creatine would cause muscle tears. I mean, it does make the muscle have a better pump. It volumizes the muscle cell, which usually makes the muscle cell more anabolic. It also obviously buffers ATP via the creatine phosphate route. So you're going to have more endurance and energy. I don't see why it would cause more muscle tears. There's no mechanism there that would do that, other than the fact that maybe it makes you a little stronger and you might lift heavier than you're really capable of. But I wouldn't say there's a cause and effect. Hey, you take creatine, you're going to tear your muscles more, more times out of, not. I just don't see that.
This one right up your alley. It's from One Slow Post. I'm currently recovering from a shoulder replacement. Once healed, they will move to the other shoulder. Did you continue to work out with the other arm during recovery, or did you wait until both were operated on and healed?
I believe that when you're going to have any kind of surgery or you have an injury, the worst thing you can do is stop everything. And I know a lot of people that do that. They're like, what's the purpose? I'm just going to heal. I know people that get a cold and a sniffle and they're out of the gym for 2 weeks. Like 2 weeks? My kids aren't out of school for 2 weeks. Oh, I felt run down. I said, no, you felt lazy after taking a couple of days off from the gym to recover from whatever you had going on. Once you're over it, you got to get your ass back to the gym, because what happens is you start getting like, I don't really feel like myself. Of course you have. You haven't moved for 3 days. You've been laying on the couch watching TV or watching your iPhone. So it's important that you get back into the saddle. So when you get when I got my shoulder replacement done, I was training the other side. Now he did say he wanted me out of the gym for a certain period of time because he was afraid I was going to, grip something with that arm and do something stupid. So I think I stayed out for 6 weeks. And then he said, okay, you can go back to the gym and work your legs and, the other side, but I don't want you working that side for 12 weeks. So after 6 weeks, I went back to the gym and I started working everything else out, as if the way I normally would do. I built up my weights again and it felt really good. And then at the 12-week mark from the first shoulder replacement, I started doing that, the shoulder that was replaced, because when they go into your shoulder, they have to cut through the infraspinatus tendon, which is your rotator cuff tendon, and they relocate the bicep tendon. So they kind of attach it to your pec tendon. So that has to heal. That takes at least 6 to 8 weeks to heal. So 12 weeks to play it safe. So that's what he told me. I listened to him because I did not want to have to go back and get anything redone. And you know what? I had great results. So I got the first one done. I waited a full year almost to get the second one done because I wanted the side that I had done to be, fully functional. Once that was fully functional, I scheduled the second surgery and I did the other surgery. And once again, I trained the replaced side, after 6 weeks after the second surgery, and it was fine. I really got really good results. He was very happy with the results. And even to this day, I don't even know how many years it's been. It's been probably about 4 years now. Knock on wood, I feel really good when I train at the gym. I don't have any pain, and I'm pretty much fully functional. Now, I don't lift as heavy as I did when I was training, but you know what? I have no pain. And what you'll find is when you get a shoulder replacement, you've been dealing with shoulder pain for many, many years. It's so frustrating because you never train out of pain. You're always in pain in the gym. So for me to go to the gym and just be able to do like today, I did shoulder presses. I went up to the 50s. I'm finally up to the 50s, and I did them pretty easily. And I can go heavier, but I'm taking my time. I don't need to rush it. It feels so good just to be able to do a full contraction, not have to try to contort my body and do all kinds of weird things to try to keep my shoulders out of pain. It's nice to be able to just flex. And you know what? When I can contract my shoulders with no pain, I'm getting much better results now because I have a good mind-muscle connection from all the years of training, and it's really a pleasure. So yes, I totally think you should get your number one, never stop eating the way you're eating, even when you're recovering. Stick to your bodybuilding diet, even if you're not in the gym. And then when you get back to the gym, train everything that's not that arm, and I promise you, if you train the good arm or the side that's not being surgically operated on, it will definitely prevent this side that is being operated on from atrophying as much. I did not see as much atrophy. He was shocked, as a matter of fact, that he didn't see as much atrophy. And he said it's probably attributed to the fact that you did train the other side.
Interesting one here from Excellent 187. You consider pre-workouts as a quote luxury item, but for someone who trains after work and needs a little boost, what sort of ingredients should one contain that can have a significant impact on your training?
I don't know how the person didn't really indicate how late that they train. Now, a lot of times people that work all day drink a lot of coffee or energy drinks. So they're pretty much immune to the caffeine effects. Because a lot of people, like if I were to do a pre-workout, like right now I'm wired from drinking stimuli. Okay. And I'm only sipping a half a serving of it while I'm doing this thing. But if I were to do this like at 8 o'clock at night, after I got off work, if I had a real job, and I went to the gym, I'd be up all night. I'd be up till 4 a.m. I'd never be able to fall asleep. But if I know people that drink a lot of coffee or energy drinks all day and they can do a serving of this, they'll feel it for an hour or so, and then it wears off because stims don't affect them that much because they're used to them, and they can go to sleep fine. So I really believe wholeheartedly, if you're going to do a pre-workout and you need a little boost, our Stimuli product is really, really perfectly balanced from the beta-alanine to the citrulline in there for the pumps, the beta-alanine obviously for the anti-fatigue factor, neutralizing the lactic acid, buffering that. And then, of course, the nootropic formula, which has got some caffeine in it, but mostly it has nootropics, which make your brain feel good. And when you're in a good mood, okay, you can have a good workout. You don't need to be. I hate feeling stimmed out of my mind where my jaw is moving around and I'm like shaking. Like I don't like that feeling. It's not, to me. I feel like I'm releasing a lot of cortisol because it's stressing my body out. So we try to create stimuli with a formula that gave you the alertness that you wanted and gave you that, I'm awake and I'm not going to sleep because I'm focused, but without the jitters. And I think I tried probably seriously like 200 different combinations over like 2 or 3 year period before we finally got the one that we settled on. And I promise you, if you try it, you're going to be very satisfied with how you feel with it. And it's going to be something that you can use. And when it wears off, it kind of wears off very gradually. So you don't just get a crash when it stops, unless you're exhausted, of course. But for you, the person asking the question is going to be perfect because they're going to go to sleep when they get home. So I think that'll work out well for them.
I use enanthate for some time and eventually found it very difficult to consume my meals. I switched to sustanon, and this made an improvement. Could you please explain, I guess, why some PEDs cause appetite suppression, or could they have just been something else making it difficult for me to consume my meals?
Yeah, I don't think it was the enanthate. Tested enanthate is like such a slow-acting compound. It's well tolerated. If anything, I always found that I had an improved appetite from tested enanthate. If anything, sustanon would usually mess up my appetite because the testosterone propionate that's in sustanon kind of can give you that like queasy feeling because it makes you come. In some people, especially me, I have a sensitivity to it. I feel like I get the flu when I take that stuff. So I don't think it was the testosterone. I think it might have been something else going on. It could have been, you could have had a little viral infection. It could have been something else you were taking. It's hard to tell, but I've never heard anyone tell me, hey, I take a shot of testosterone and I have no appetite, while I'm on it. Maybe the first day you take a shot, sometimes when people first start, they get a little bit of what we call serum sickness, or some people call it the steroid flu. And that's just because your body's in shock from this foreign compound being in your bloodstream. And it's a lot, it's a lot of testosterone in one delivery that sometimes the body's immune system can hyper respond to that. But I don't think this is the case. It seems like this person is experiencing this for longer periods of time. I just don't see it happening from the test. And I think unless the formula he's using has something else in it that he's not aware of,
Let's go to Iconic Football. If you want to run a small cycle, 16 weeks test and orals, can you first run 4 to 6 weeks, one oral, break for the same duration, and then at the same time, oral or a different one for same 4 to 6 weeks?
Yeah, that's how I would do it, to be honest with you. If you're going to do orals, do them for short periods, like, 4 weeks. Take a break off the oral, stick to, long-acting, relatively non-toxic injectables. And then if you want to go back, do that for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and then maybe go back to another 4 weeks of orals, because the orals, have a little bit of liver toxicity. Depending on which ones you're using, they can have a lot of liver toxicity, like Dianabol is more toxic than Anavar and Winstrol, but Anadrol is way more toxic than Dianabol, whereas T-bol or Turinabol is probably right under D-bol. So they all have different degrees, but I would say that anything more than Anavar and Winstrol tabs are usually what I would call toxic and something that you wouldn't want to use for more than 4 to 6 weeks in a row.
Let me see. This one from Nico Cantemir about the off-season strategies. Off-season strategy to gain muscle weight without gaining too much fat. I guess we do get this question time to time. I guess your general overview in terms of off-season muscle mass without, I guess, blowing up.
I mean, that's really just carb maintenance and or as I call it, insulin management. I mean, insulin management just means how much insulin your body is producing, and if you can manage how much it's going to produce, and the way you do that is by the carbohydrate intake, right? If you eat more carbs, you release more insulin. The more insulin you release in some people's bodies, they get fat because of that. Insulin is a potent fat storage hormone when you're eating excessive amounts of calories, as you do in an off-season scenario. Some people, though, when I do off-season, I guess I'm always off-season now, right? Because I'm not competing anymore. But when I eat, I probably undereat the amount of carbs I need to eat for the entire day. So let's say Dave Palumbo needs to eat 300 grams of carbs. If I'm only eating 250 for the entire day, then I'm undereating essentially, and because I'm undereating, I'm not going to get fat. If Dave Palumbo needs 300 grams of carbs and I eat 400 grams of carbs every day, little by little, I might start accumulating fat, assuming my body's metabolism doesn't burn off the extra carbs that I don't really need. So some people are really sensitive. If they go 10 or 20 grams of carbs over what they need, they release too much insulin and they start getting fat and bloating from it. And that's unfortunately metabolically related, but you can easily manage that by how many grams of carbs you eat. So if you say, all right, you know what, I'm a bloated mess now. I don't look like the way I look. I'm eating 300 grams of carbs. I'm going to cut it back to 250 and see what happens. You cut it back to 250 and you start losing some bloat and some weight, and you're like, okay, maybe I'm on the right amount now. But if you still maybe at some point you hit a plateau and you don't look good, you might need to cut it back to 200 grams a day. I have a guy, if we feed him more than 150 grams of carbs a day, his blood sugar goes through the roof. But he needs some carbs to grow. So we just keep him at 150. Now, that's pretty low off season, but you know what? I feed him more protein, more fat, and he seems to do well, and he's responding well. And so that's what we're doing. So everyone's a little different, and you got to just figure out for the person that you're working with what works for them.
Let's go to Alexander Ruin. Coach, if you want to slowly get into a keto diet and start replacing carbs with fats, do you keep the same calories and replace, for example, 40 grams carbs with 15 to 20 grams of fats, or would you go even lower than that on the fats, same amount of protein?
Well, if you're going to go to a ketogenic diet, you got to make sure you eat enough fat, because if you don't, then your body will turn the protein you're eating into carbs, which is what you don't want. And you're not going to go into ketosis if your body's got carbs in it. It doesn't matter where the carbs come from, whether it's your body's converting protein to carbs or your body is actually eating carbs. Your body doesn't know the difference, and your brain doesn't know the difference, so you're not going to go into ketosis. If you eat enough fat per meal with your protein, 15 to 25 grams, depending on the size of you, okay, now your body's going to have a fuel source to use. So your body's going to be like, okay, you know what? We're not getting there's no carbs coming in here. The brain's not going to be able to function. Let's switch to ketosis. Okay, the brain will now use fat as a fuel source. We're eating enough fat. There's plenty of fuel available, and that's what your body will use. So, based on your diet, that's going to dictate whether you're in ketosis or not. I think a lot of people think that if I just eat protein and like some green beans, that I'll be in ketosis. Now, you might to some degree, but a lot of guys might not, because there is no fuel source that you're eating. So a lot of times that protein, and up to 50% of that protein, can convert to carbs. And so now you think you're eating, like a really low carb diet, but you're really not, because your body's converting the protein into carbs because you're not providing your body with a fuel source. So while you can do protein and vegetables for short periods of time, especially as a man, you don't want to be doing it for long periods of time as a man, because eventually it can backfire on you. Women, different story. Women could go, because if a woman eats, a 5-ounce chicken breast, there's probably enough fat in there to provide her 120-pound body with her daily, fat requirements. If a man eats a chicken breast, there's not enough fat in there So he's still deficient. He has to subsidize his meals with some fat. So always think protein plus fuel source. What do you want the fuel source to be? Do you want it to be carbs or do you want it to be fat? That's going to dictate, whether you're in ketosis or not.
We'll take one more. Just correct me if I'm wrong. It's Capergholhine, correct?
Capergholhine, yeah.
Capergholhine, okay. Can you go a little in depth about Capergholhine? Out of any compound I've ever used, antis affect me horribly. Anxiety, depression, zero sex drive. I have prolactin issues. Thoughts on how to cycle it and what side effects to expect?
Well, Capergholhine should only be really used. It's also the brand name is Dostinex. It should only be used if you have high prolactin levels. Now, why would you have high prolactin levels? Well, if you have a prolactin-induced tumor in your brain and you're cranking out prolactin, that would be one reason. That's obviously something that you'd have to have addressed with the doctor. The other reason why a lot of bodybuilders get high prolactin levels is because they take drugs like DECA and Trenbolone, and usually in dosages that are too high. So when you take high dosages of testosterone-derived drugs like Trenbolone acetate, Trenbolone enanthate, DECA, even the Durabolin version, which is the nandrolone phenylpropionate, can cause slightly high levels of prolactin. You can have problems because in certain people, when prolactin levels are high, they can get some discharge from their nipples. They get what's called a prolactin-induced gynecomastia, or they can actually have trouble with erections because high prolactin levels inhibit erections in some people. I know guys that have high prolactin levels, they have no side effects, but they don't even know that they have high prolactin levels. And then I have other people that have just moderately high prolactin levels and they can't get an erection. They have every single side effect that comes along with it. And I don't believe that people are by far hypochondriacs, so I have to believe that people respond differently to high levels of prolactin. If you're one of these people who is asking the question, if you do have high prolactin, for whatever reason, you're taking certain drugs or whatever, you can take Capergholhine at 0.5 milligram, maybe every other day. Usually we do 3 times a week. And that will inhibit prolactin, production. But it doesn't work in every single person the same way. So my suggestion is if you really have negative effects from taking these drugs like DECA and Trenbolone, and you're not using excessive dosages, because that's sometimes a problem too. No one in the 90s complained that Trenbolone caused erection issues. DECA, yes, but not Trenbolone. And it wasn't until people started using these exorbitantly high dosages that people started complaining about that. So I think with the Trenbolone especially, it's dose related, and probably with DECA, it's dose related too. I never had a problem taking DECA and having an erection issue or anything like that. But I do know people that can look at a vial of DECA and they have a problem. So if you're one of those people, just don't use that drug. If you're a person who has a sensitivity, but when you take Dostinex, Capergholhine, it fixes the problem, then you can do that as well. The only way you're going to really know for sure is trial and error. You got to try it out.
That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. A reminder, if you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. We have all new episodes of the After Hours podcast yesterday, all new episode of Heavy Muscle Radio, and then, of course, Dave's reaction video to new classic physique height and weight requirements that were just passed and announced yesterday. So Dave's reaction to that, a full breakdown and what that means for the division going forward. Again, if you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. If you like what you're watching, hit the like button, comment below. And as always, we appreciate all of your support. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.